Welcome to TMD on the Record. I'm your host, Dave Cleach. This is my friend and colleague, Jeff Timmons.
And nice to be here with you, Dave.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, man. You're looking rather festive today.
Well, I do see you every day, but nice to see you in this environment and getting back on the record.
It's kind of nice to get back on the record. I was recounting a conversation that I had earlier today. One I think we should tee up for like future discussion, but we didn't want to lose momentum because we were getting into a really good back and forth on this. I had a great conversation with a prospective client. He's a really good friend, someone that we just recently reconnected with. But the conversation we had, it was the potential for it to be a very creative application. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It's a really, really cool concept. I won't tell you who they are, but just a very, very cool concept about blending experiential with digital and using that as a mechanism to bring arts and culture to a broader community. It's a wonderful, wonderful business model. But as much as we could have gone down one path with that discussion, the traditional path, which is like let's make shit that looks really cool. Let's spend a lot of time on creating awesome, creative, kick-ass content. And these are all great things. It's what we love to do,
and a lot of money.
But it also could be a really big distraction. And what I loved about the conversation, let's call him Eric. That is actually his name, but let's call him Eric. What I loved about what he said is he drove into really what is at the heart of everything that we do as a marketing agency, which is performance. The whole conversation that we had today, in spite of the temptation to get creative, in spite of the temptation to follow that naturally where, we are creative people. That's who we are. In spite of the temptation to go down there, we had a very grounded conversation about conversion, about performance, about metrics, about cost to acquire, about how we use current success to fuel and fund subsequent extension of the brand proposition. All of that was a dynamite discussion. So we've been kind of kicking around this phrase for the last couple of weeks, you and I, and we're going to say something that most marketing agencies are not going to say.
This has been said never by most marketing agencies.
Well, and I think when I first said it to you, you're like, oh, fuck, man, really? But the more we talk about it, the more it becomes completely relevant. So yes, for those of you that are watching and listening, I hope there were more of you watching and listening this one than there were for the one that we just recorded.
15 minutes ago.
15 minutes ago. If that happened, then we've entirely done our job. But as a marketing agency, I think it might be time to cut your marketing budget and start to invest in your performance budget.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is far too often we get caught up in the fundamentals of execution. We get caught up in the opportunity to create. And again, these are all wonderful things, right? But we get so caught up in that, we forget sometimes we need to think about how are we going to manage that execution? How are we going to manage that performance? So all of those great content, creative, social, digital, all of those elements that come together, how are they actually delivering results? And can we have a creative discussion while at the same time having a discussion about cost to acquire, about market share, about performance and conversion? I think it's time to cut your marketing budget and invest in a performance budget.
Well, and this became the reason we wanted to get back in the seats here, or back in the saddle, and talk about this right now was I had a separate conversation today with a client where we cut the budget by 40% to fuel the performance side of it. So to fuel the fact that they were doing all this amazing work, but they got them to a point of conversion where they couldn't convert.
Yep.
And because they weren't investing there. And our discussion became, for us to be held accountable as a marketing partner, we need to take money out of the marketing budget and stick it in this performance budget. And, all too often, those are different silos, and the reality is they need to be the same. You can't have a marketing discussion anymore without performance. And if you are with your agency or your marketing director or your CMO, then get rid of them and make change, because you have to be performance based.
Well, and I love what you guys talked about when you were chatting with the client this morning about marketing and sales holding each other accountable for the number, right? And whether we like it or not, most of us don't. We happen to really enjoy it when we get our asses nailed to a number. This is what the expectation is. This is the goal.
Oh,
this
it's like
is
a
the
challenge now. Now we're playing it. It's a game. We like to win.
Well, it's like we said, now we're talking to grown-ups,
Yeah.
right? Because now we're talking to like, okay, this is what it really is all about. And what I loved about what you talked about this morning after your discussion with the client is that there was alignment there between about marketing holding sales accountable. So like, yes, marketing is going to fund that business development opportunity. And it might be something tactical like a sponsorship, like a golf tournament.
A hospitality deal or whatever.
Exactly. Like whatever the execution winds up being. Far too often, marketing is not working with the sales side of the organization that recognizes there's an expectation to deliver return on that spend. And if it's not in their budget, then like, well, fuck it. It's not our problem. We went to the golf tournament. We had a great foursome and we went out and had steaks afterwards. Okay, well, that's great. But like, what did you get from that? It's the age old ROI on a trade show or a conference.
Right.
Like, how are you going to demonstrate that, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars go into funding, having a presence at a trade show or a conference, or whether it's hundreds of thousands of dollars into a sponsorship or an event or something like that, some kind of partnership like that. There's no expectation on results. I love the idea of marketing and sales holding each other accountable so that marketing says, look, we're going to fund this for you. We're going to pay for this. We're going to set it up. We're going to develop everything you need to wrap around it so you can sell. If you don't sell, if you don't hit that target, guess what? You're going to pay for it.
That's absolutely it.
Yeah, I love it. But what I loved about the conversation this morning is we were talking about something that I know is going to have great downstream creative application, but we started the discussion where it should be started. Let's talk about what do we need to do to actually acquire new business. And let's talk about how we nurture and manage those engagements through a series of conversions so they deliver revenue and not a one-shot deal. This is not an $8 cost per acquisition based on a $40 ticket sale. It's not that at all. I need to be able to figure out how I take that $40 ticket, merchandise the experience, wrap our arms around it so it's now $250, $300 per acquisition cost. And then how can I use that to extend my reach into other networks, other like targets, other profiles or personas that meet the same criteria? And now I'm managing performance.
Yep.
Everything we spend, every investment we make should be tied to a performance metric.
Yeah. When we started this conversation with our client this morning, we sat down and, we had the stereotypical coffee and donuts and muffins, and thanks for bringing that in, by the way.
They were delicious.
But we started the conversation with, today's going to be a little different. Today, we're going to have an adult marketing conversation. We're not going to talk about fucking TikTok. We're not going to talk about social. We're not going to talk about creating content. And we're going to talk about how we, like adults talk, how we make a difference in the business and how we hold each other accountable. And frankly, how we, as marketing leaders, we're going to keep our jobs and make ourselves more important to the organization.
And so much, like, this was always important. This always should have been the reason why we got together to try to do any of this stuff in the first place. But we're heading into a recession. Consumers are going to be really, really picky with where they put their dollars. It's costing them a lot more to buy what they used to be able to buy with the same dollar a year or two ago. It's really, really important for marketers to recognize that. It doesn't necessarily mean we need to spend more. Right. And I think that's really important. It doesn't mean that your marketing budgets need to go up. Increasing your marketing budget without necessarily understanding how that budget is going to impact performance. And ultimately, and when we talk about performance, let's be clear.
I think you just caused like a firestorm. You hear the fire trucks across the street coming through my headphones. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but
well, it's a Friday, and it's a bit of a gong show outside. We're leading into the weekend. That was bound to happen. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to increase budgets.
Yeah.
What it really means is you need to focus on putting the budget where it's going to deliver the greatest return.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those conversations are really fucking hard, right? Because like the conversation that you had, you need to pull budget away from shit that you might actually really enjoy doing, that maybe the CEO really wants to do for all the right reasons. If they actually don't deliver a return, kill the budget.
Yeah.
Kill the budget and redirect it. And what I loved about that is you're investing in the infrastructure required so you can convert more cost effectively. You can convert more people more efficiently, more often. and actually feed that funnel with more qualified folks that are actually interested and are prepared to buy.
And you might be the fun police a little bit. You might be taking some fun out of some of the executions on the brand, but the reality is it is really fun to win. And you kind of heard it first here. It's time to cut the marketing budget.
Yeah, time to cut the marketing budget.
And I'm willing to go on the record with that.
Well, it's a good thing that you are, because in fact we are, right?
On the record.
On the record. So you heard it first here, folks. TMD on the record from a marketing agency. It's time to cut your marketing budget and start to invest in performance.
That's it. We're done.